We are going to talk about some real life problem in supply chain world. I am Sudhir Jaiswal and I am going to be your host during this webinar. And with me, we have some exciting speakers. Mr. Ritam Chakravarti, he is head of product and solutions and has more than 2 decades of working experience in tech and domain of supply chain. And he has solved many complex problems. And he is the man anchor behind this 20 High. Also, we have a very exciting guest, a very senior person from supply chain industry, Mr. Kelvin Go, Senior Director APAC region for Global Alliances and Partnership, Project 44. Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you, Ritam. 2020 was an eventful year in the supply chain industry. There was a complete breakdown, and this was quite incomprehensible, even to the experts. Till now, before this happened, we knew about some kind of VUCA world. We talked about VUCA world, that everyone knows about this acronym: volatility in the industry, uncertainty. It's a complex industry. There is a lot of ambiguity. However, in 2020, the new acronym BANI came out because of the event unfolded this time. Supply chain not complex, it was kind of broken. We felt the industry is brittle. People were anxious. Production was on, kind of, but they're anxious when I get the material. And the situation was non-linear. It's not predictable at all. And more important, even to the experts, it was incomprehensible. What next? And the world realized that going forward, this will be a new normal. And you can see a typical office of supply chain management. Everyone has a question. Everyone is thinking something, trying to figure out something, but looks like there's no solution. This is the kind of chaos existed in the most of the supply chain organization. So my question to set the context, what is supply chain risk, supply chain management risk, or logistics risk? My question is to Ritam. Ritam, what do you think, or what do you mean when you say supply chain risk? What exactly it means? And specifically, given the context of this risk, how do you think it is going to impact the businesses? Ritam.
Yes. Hello, and good morning and good afternoon, and probably people who are in this part of the world, good evening. So yeah, so the question that you're raising is very fundamental and is a very relevant one as well. Now, to me, you look at it like a supply chain is a delicate play, a delicate balance between the supply and the demand forces, right? And any factor which disrupts or breaks that balance is a potential risk to the supply chain, right? Now, while I was working, like you have mentioned, I have been working for almost like 23 years. So in the while I was working, I could categorize the risks into majorly 4 different categories, like in the supply chain risk in 4 different categories. The first and the foremost is the category of demand and supply risks, meaning these risks are actually playing at the demand and the supply points. For example, demand uncertainties. You know, people or the consumers are the main ingredients of demands, but they are the most vulnerable segment to information, or to say misinformation, because of all this multitude of channels you have of information sharing, social media, internet, you name it. So the consumer sentiments and the loyalty to a product is now changing at a very fast pace. And that creates a lot of uncertainty in the minds of the demand planners while they're planning the demands. That's the demand uncertainty risk. Similarly, you are seeing the disruptions because of natural disasters or geopolitical situations, terrorism, war, Ukraine war. We are actually seeing how it is panning out and how it is impacting the overall global economy. COVID, to me, actually, COVID is like an ice age. The world before COVID and the world after COVID are totally 2 different worlds, right? So these factors, these risks, which acts at the demand and the supply points and disrupts the supply chain, are categorized as demand and supply risks. Second category is on operational risks, those risks which are acting at the execution level, like theft, cargo theft. Now, interestingly, theft is a very regional risk. We see in the South American region, which is having the highest cargo thefts because of organized crimes there. Near home, India, we have done a study. We have found that almost 4% of the worldwide cargo theft can be attributed to the Indian subcontinent. So the logistics planners in these regions are dealing with these risks on a daily basis. There are other risks like carrier unavailability or transport problems. Now, you know, in the supply chain, transportation, worldwide transportation, 70% of that is attributed to road transportation. And road transportation, funnily, is the most inefficient leg in the entire supply chain because it is most susceptible to local factors. So, so risks can happen because of the road transportation condition, traffic condition, climatic condition, local factors, lockdowns. All of these issues can impact. Port congestion is another risk. For example, because in the port, whatever happens inside a port stays inside a port. It's absolutely very difficult to get information out of the port that where and when my cargo will be available for pickup, or when should I send out the drayage planner to collect the container. It's so very difficult, and that creates a lot of uncertainties and leads to a lot of detention and demurrage penalties because of these uncertainties. Cargo damage, shipment delays are the other kind of operational risks that you deal with. The third category of the risks that you see are the ones which actually pinches you the most, because here you have to spend the money. Detention and demurrage actually constitutes almost 10% of the entire logistic cost that we incur. And the fallacy of the detention and demurrage problem is you cannot validate when those are claimed in the invoices, because there's very little way of tracking why the detention has happened or where the detention has happened. So a lot of pilferage happens in the detention phase because of that. And then you have logistics cost overrun, margin issues. Those are the other risks that you see in the financial segment. And the final bucket is on the statutory risks, like which are where you're violating some norms and conventions, like your carbon emission or driver work time limits. Like in US, you have 11 hours work time for the drivers. So if you're going beyond that, you have to probably pay up more penalties or overtime, likewise. Then you have these personal data privacy rules that are coming up in the European region in the form of GDPR. So these all risks are adding more pressure to your processes and to your infrastructure. So this is what I see is the gameplay of the overall risks that we are seeing. Now, we all have heard about this toilet paper crisis that happened during the COVID period, right? Now, interestingly, that toilet paper crisis was not because of demand or the supply problem. In fact, people were using almost 40% more toilet papers while they were staying indoors, and the suppliers, the manufacturing units, were actually producing double their capacity when they in during the COVID periods. But still, these stores were rendered blanked out because there were no toilet paper reaching these stores. The finished products were not able to reach the stores at the right time because of COVID restrictions or the lockdowns that were happening. So what you see is that the supply chain risks can happen at any point. It can either be at the sourcing of raw materials, or it can be at the production of the goods, or during the distribution of the finished goods. Now, this any risk that happens in this entire chain has a domino effect or in the overall segment, and creates the impacts in the form of rising logistics costs, or your diminishing margins, or customer churn. Now, this logistics industry is working at a very, very thin margin. Like there's a study been done in 2021. The average logistics profit margin in US was almost only 2.5%, and then it was in Europe it was just 1.5%. In India, it is between 3 to 7%. So you absolutely have a very little margin of error. If you make a misstep somewhere, will directly impact your business profitability. And on the other hand, the customer churns are highest now because there's so many competitors. I did a quick Googling, and I found that in the US alone, you have almost like 700,000 3PL providers now. In UK, it is 15,000. So, and most of them are almost providing a similar set of services. So there's so much option for the customers to opt for. So one single negative impact, a negative experience, if they have with you, it is damn sure that they will be now switching to the to your competitor who is standing next door. So there's a lot of customer churns as an impact of these risks. So this is what I see as the supply chain risks and how they're impacting the supply chain overall.
Yeah, thanks, Ritam. Yes, when you're in supply chain business, there are risks, and of course, these risks were known to people before COVID, and these risks getting amplified. The challenge is that how to see it in a simple manner to simplify this amplified risk.